Hi, it's Tim. You ever been lost in the woods? I do a lot of hiking, and one time, several years ago, I got turned around in the woods, and it was getting dark, and I actually got pretty scared. So after about uh, 30 minutes, 45 minutes of plundering around aimlessly through the underbrush, surrounded by gigantic poplar trees and blackberry bushes, I saw something glorious. You know what it was? A trail. So I found a trail. I had to make a choice: take the trail or continue to plunder aimlessly through the underbrush. Which would you have done? Well, I took the trail, obviously, and sure enough, it took me back to the parking lot where my beloved Rav was waiting for me. Now, let's do a thought experiment. And a thought experiment is where you do an experiment, but you don't actually carry it out in reality, but you think about it and you can come to some decisions and some logical conclusions just by thinking through the process. It really works. Einstein loved these things. So let's say that you gather 1,000 people. Now, this group of 1,000 people is an amalgamation of humanity. It represents every part of humanity. You have Black people, you have white people, you have Asians, Europeans, Hispanics, you have Christians, you have Jews, you have atheists, you have Muslims, you have 95-year-olds, you have 5-year-olds. You have people living in $1 million mansions, and you have people that are on the street. So suffice it to say, you have amassed a group that represents all cultures of all humanity. And you ask them the question: I was lost in the woods and I found a trail. Should I take the trail or continue to plunder aimlessly through the woods? You know what they're going to say, this 1,000 people? They're going to say, are you out of your mind? Take the trail. It's your best option. You're lost. Take the trail. So when I was little, I remember asking my mom and dad, what is common sense? And they were a little bit puzzled because, how do you describe what common sense is? They said, well, it's stuff you just know. You just know these things. If it's raining, come in out of the rain. If your shoe is untied, tie your shoe so you don't trip. Common sense. Now, that's a good definition. Stuff you just know, but I want to add to it. Common sense is really sense and logic and values that we all have in common as a human race. You can go to any culture at any time in history, any part of the world, with any religion, race, creed, color, and ask them, should you come in out of the rain? And they will say, yes, you should. Common sense. It's values we have in common as the human race. Now, I hasten to add, by the way, the crowd is not always right. Sometimes the crowd is wrong. It depends on which crowd you have. But if you have a good representation, a good representative crowd, then you're probably going to get some pretty good answers like, take the trail. Are you crazy? Take the trail. That's what humanity is going to tell you. So the crowd's not always right, but typically it is right. If we listen to the masses of people down, through history, and what the values have been, we usually come out pretty good. Now, here's the problem. Because in that 1,000 people, group of 1,000 people, there's going to be 1, 2, 3% who's going to have a dissenting viewpoint. They're going to say, take the trail? Are you out of your mind? You don't know where that trail goes. It could lead you into poison ivy. It could lead you into off the side of a cliff. You don't know where that trail. It's better to just plunder aimlessly. You'd be better off doing that. And if I'd followed that advice of the 1%, 2%, 3%, I'd still be out in the woods today, eating nuts and berries and pine cones and trying to live. But I didn't. I followed the advice of the common consensus. Now, today in this country, we have something that has never happened before. We've always had the 3% who don't follow common sense. It's always been around. But now they're in charge. We've never had this before. They're in charge of the government. They're in charge of our businesses. Budweiser beer now has a man dressed as a woman hawking their beer. Disney Corporation is now one of the greatest dangers to our children. They are actively pursuing a woke agenda that says there's many genders and children can choose their own gender. Government, media, entertainment, our major corporations, they've all gone woke, almost all of them. Hollywood, sports, almost at every level, our sports teams, organizations have gone crazy, they've joined the 3%. We won't even talk about Hollywood and the craziness, but the one I want to pinpoint is now the schools, the public schools of this country are run by the 3%. This presents a great danger to our young people. And it's not just the universities anymore. It's the high schools, grade schools, kindergarten, and the preschool levels. They're government institutions, and they're run by the 3% who refuse to embrace common sense. This is a clear and present danger to our young people. The alternative is going to be private Christian school or homeschool. There's no other clear choice. Sending our children to public schools, which are run by the crazies, run by the 3% who do not embrace common sense, is a great danger to our young people. Now, I have 5 incredible grandkids, and they are amazing kids. They're smart, talented, and good looking, and well behaved. And when they're over, they're well behaved. But once in a great while, and it's got to be once in a great way, they really are great kids. But once in a while, I have to remind them of some of Papa's rules. And I'm pretty insistent on that. And I review the rule to them, and I say, I, Papa, have spoken. We'll cover some more of this later. And in future episodes of I, Papa, have spoken.